moment for the nation. There were only days ago that seems like forever. A group of seniors, a group of people decided to go to a beautiful place called Sapelo Island. They were focused on the history of the Gullah people, the segues, the stories, the lifestyles, the beautiful culture of Sapelo Island. Those seniors, those elders, never dreamed that either some would not return or some would have tragedy for the rest of their lives. On a certain group of people, the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, members of the African diaspora, and other leaders went over to see about God's children. And we went to Sapelo Island to hear from some of those residents that were there. And we heard from some of those residents that not only were in the water or lost loved ones, but we heard of those that dragged and had to pull loved ones out of the water that did not make it. And so they called them the Sapelo 7, but today we stand with Sapelo. And so today we have come together as leaders from across the nation. We have with us the legal representation from Attorney Chad Mance, Attorneys Davis and Johnson, and representation from Attorney Ben Crump. But today we stand with you as representatives of children and connectors of families from those that lost loved ones. Today we will present to you some of those persons that are here on the legal end, witnesses that will be in this hearing, and the nation needs to hear the story. We cannot forget the story of Sapelo Island, and we cannot forget the story of the Sapelo 7. This hearing that we are about to partake upon under the Senate Urban Affairs Committee, under the great leadership of Senator Donzella James, will be a witness to the nation as to what happened. And as Dr. King always said, be true to what you say on paper. The state of Georgia has to listen really good on today. And we need to do right by those citizens, by their families. From counseling to those that even have gone home, that the state should have participated in at least paying for their funeral. In the words of young people, I'm just saying. And so if we're about the business of Georgia, we must take care of the people of Georgia. And so I don't want to waste any time on today. I want to present to you one of those persons that will be a part of the legal team for families. And we do have individuals here that were a part of it. And that is Attorney Davis, who's representing Davis and Johnson Bozeman. He's going to come to us at this time. Will you welcome him?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to our courageous elected officials who stand here for not just the Sapelo 7, but for the entire state. This is a tragedy that impacts the entire state, the entire country. We wanted to come, and we have witnesses who will testify today before this important body to explain what they experienced, what they witnessed. There are three things that we wanted to lift up that we think are critically important. First, there is evidence that members of the DNR were aware of there being some compromise to this dock, that this dock was not stable, that it had been communicated, and that they did not immediately cease moving people across it. So they were aware, so they were on notice prior to this. And so that was one of the things that we thought was critically important. When we talk about accidents and things happening, oftentimes there's not superior knowledge, that there isn't any information and this just happened. Well, what the evidence we expect will come out during the course of all of the proceedings is that there were people who were in positions of authority who did know that the dock was not stable and that there was something wrong and that they should not have been moving people across it. So that's one piece that we wanted to lift up. The other is that once the tragedy began, the woeful lack of training for employees to provide the necessary emergency aid. And you'll hear about some of that based on employees just really not being able to assist those who were fighting for their lives and trying to survive this. And the final piece is the trauma that people who didn't necessarily go in that water experienced. And that's something that we have to continue to lift up, this trauma that is experienced when people witness something as horrific as not just seeing the 7 people die, but to see how people were fighting for their life, fighting for their loved ones, searching, calling out, crying out, just scrambling in ways that really would boggle the imagination. And so we wanted to share that, lift that up. We're proud to be working with our brother in Savannah, Chad Mans, in working on cases collaboratively as Georgia-based attorneys, because we felt it was important that we be a part of doing this work on behalf of our people. And so I just wanted to lift that up on behalf of the Davis, Bozeman, Johnson law firm. I represent both my law partners, Robert Bozeman as well as Francis Johnson. So thank you, Chairman, and we look forward, and thank you, Senator, for calling us together. Thank you all.
First, I want to acknowledge the courageous Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, the largest black caucus of legislators in the entire world. Thank you for having the vision, the courage, and the integrity to stand up not just for the Sapelo 7, but for Sapelo Island. Next, I want to acknowledge the ancestors that really brought us here and that are crying out to democracy, to say to the world, Sapelo matters too. Sapelo mattered when it helped build coastal Georgia's economy. It mattered. And it still matters today. And I think that the echoing voices of those ancestors and the many legislators that have come through here is saying that above all, safety is the highest law. That we can't feel secure in our democracy unless we feel secure that we can be safe when we, for example, journey to and from our homes on an island or on a street. After all, for Sapelo Island, the gangway was their road in and their road out. And so we want to remind the American public that we live in a nation of docks. We live in a nation of gangways. And in coastal Georgia, gangways are a way of life. And if we can't keep up our gangways, which allow us to access our oceans and our rivers and our lakes, then all of us are really imperiled. And so what happened in Sapelo Island is a microcosm of what is really happening with a lack of safety throughout the world. There are 3 things that I'd like the public to remember. The first is that this is not a Sapelo issue, this is an American issue. It's not a Sapelo issue, it's an American issue. The second thing that I'd like the public to remember is that it's going to take a multifaceted, collaborative approach to remedy the root cause of what happened on Sapelo Island. Legislators alone can't do it. Lawyers alone certainly can't. And certainly the victims on Sapelo Island cannot by themselves do it. Instead, the public is going to have to cause this to emerge to the fore, stay at the fore, and result in systemic, broad-based change. And finally, I want to remind you that this is an election season. And when you go to the polls, remember who stood up for your safety. There is psychological trauma that is run rampant on the island. People can't sleep. And pain might wake them up at night. But I think all of that is a reminder from our ancestors across the aisle that if we don't protect Georgians, we can't protect Georgia. So I want to thank the courageous delegation for having the audacity to hope that we can have a safer Georgia. Because without a safer Georgia, we can't have a safer democracy. Thank you very much. God bless you and Godspeed.
Attorney Crump cannot be here, but he has very viable representation. Attorney Jackson is here. And then we also have our House Democratic Chair, Billy Mitchell, followed by our great Senator, Donzella James.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the Georgia Black Caucus for inviting us here and putting this together, because in all of this, we cannot forget the victims. These victims need help that has not been offered to them yet. They have called us, they are grieving, they have medical needs, they have financial needs for funerals, they have counseling needs. None of that has been offered. That is what they need. That is what we are here today. We have two of our clients who will testify today about their needs and what happened and what needs to happen. They'll testify in this hearing. You will hear from them. We are also calling on the federal government to do an investigation into Sapelo Island and what happened. Make no mistake about it, this was a very, very preventable incident and tragedy that should have never happened. We will be meeting, we have experts and attorneys who will be meeting with DNR on November 7th to investigate the wreckage. We have our engineers, our metallurgical people to go out there to find out what happened. We are going to look under every leaf and uncover everything that happened, everything that could have been done to prevent this from happening. We lost senior citizens. The majority of the people who died were over 70 years old. These were people who were living their lives, enjoying their lives on a tourist vacation, and they lost their lives. They didn't lose their lives because they died of old age. They died because of a failure, and that's a failure that we must remedy. And in the meantime, while we're waiting to remedy that failure, we need to make sure that the people who did survive have the resources that they need to be able to function and at least try to get over some of the trauma that they had to endure by pulling their loved ones out of the water, by seeing them drown, by having to let go. You'll hear from one of our clients who actually had to let go of her uncle, Mr. Thomas, who died. You'll hear from her today. These are real people that need help, and we're calling on the state of Georgia to help them.
I'm so glad that you are here today covering this issue. The more that this issue is covered, the less likely you might be subject to this kind of incident. The reality is that the main purpose of government is to take care of its citizens. I'm glad that the attorneys here are calling for a federal investigation. Some of them are here because of the civil liabilities, but I personally believe that there is some criminal liability here. There's a notion in the law, res ipsa loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. Certainly this is not to happen here, and I'm so glad that that is being called for. The Georgia House Democratic Caucus joins the Senate Democratic Caucus in doing what we can, policy-wise, to make sure that we protect our citizens. I'm so glad the chairperson, Senator Donzella James, is going to be having a hearing. She's a legendary state senator, has done so much good for so long, and I'm glad to see this committee being convened and to see what kind of policy that we can develop, like I said, to keep our citizens safe. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's see if I can do this. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And thank you, all of my colleagues in the House and Senate, because this is an issue that you can't sweep under the rug or that you even want to ignore. When we were called by our great chairperson to come to this past weekend, to come down to Sapelo, I was glad that I was able to go and see for myself. I've been to Sapelo many, many times. I always wondered why we couldn't even get a grocery store over there. It's not a grocery store. They don't have a health place for you, or a hospital. They were meeting in the senior citizen house where opera funds that we got, you know, the American Rescue Plan money. Some of it went there to help renovate the house and to keep everything going. And the list goes on the federal dollars that went into that building and the state dollars. But for some reason now, that senior citizen place where they were using for a doctor to come or whatever they needed, all their meetings, it doesn't belong to them anymore. It says somebody's barbecue kitchen or something. It's a restaurant. It's a restaurant. They took that from the people who are there. And where do they meet? They couldn't even meet anywhere that night when people were pulled out of the water. They didn't have a place. This is unacceptable. And while we're talking about it, let's get them a grocery store over there and a whole lot of things, like, for example, the people are not here yet who are going to speak upstairs in room 450 shortly. They're not here yet, but they left on the first ferry. You have to ride on the ferry and they had to drive here from there. So they have not arrived yet because of the traffic between near Savannah all the way here. So we want to let you know, with our Black Caucus, with our great legal team that has come and working with individuals as well as working for the whole island. We just want to thank you, because together we can make a difference for our people in Sapelo. The first time I went, it was only one African American that was on the board, because, you know, they got Sapelo Island was annexed into the county a long, long time ago. What's that? What's the name of the county? McIntosh County, excuse me. And so they have to go all the way to McIntosh County for a meeting. We only had one, and he's in heaven now. Reginald Hall's father, when I first came. So I want to make sure that others who want to offer themselves to serve will be able to do that as well. Right now, they would have to go back and forth on the ferry, and it's not even practical. Even though we have technology now that could put them on Zoom or whatever, and they wouldn't have to get on a ferry and then find a hotel, because the last ferry leaves, just like the school kids have to go all the way over to the island or to Brunswick or Savannah, but they have to get back and get on the last ferry. If they play sports or if they're in the chorus or something, they can't stay after school and practice. So they can't be a part of the extracurricular activities at the schools. So this goes on with all of the concerns and problems that exist. But now the Department of Natural Resources put that new tram there where they could walk up. But clearly not 50 people or more when they're talking about no more than 15 or 20. So who was monitoring that? that they just let them go up there. And then when they fell in the water, we couldn't find but one DNR person, and unfortunately he lost his life. So I'll stop at this point. We have to go upstairs for it's what? Okay, for the Sapelo Island hearing. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me talk. I'm passionate about it, so I talk long. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator James. And for the essence of time, we're not going to, I think we can direct our questions upstairs. And also there might be some parables of people you want to talk to here. But for the essence of time, because I know a lot of us came here to make sure that they were being heard statewide and nationwide. So we're going to just take about 2 questions, and then we're going to quickly go ahead and assemble upstairs so we can start the official hearing. That is why we're doing this hearing, to follow the yellow brick road. There are things that we feel, there are things that we've seen, but we feel that if we follow the recommendations of the Senate Urban Affairs Committee, that is a viable step forward, and to hear these testimonies go on record, and to hear the people of Georgia that will respond. There were a lot of other people that were not able to get their story told. So our prayers today are those people that have signed up, that they will do so. Following this hearing, we will follow the guidance of the committee, the Senate Urban Affairs Committee, and then we will move forward with suggestions of the legal team as well. We do, but I've learned in the book of the movement of people like Reverend Fred Taylor and others, leaders, to get the information first. Make sure we have everything that we need to make an intelligent decision. And so we want to be very thorough. We don't want to point fingers to the left or right. In some ways, the evidence is right there in front of us, blatant and plain. But we want to make sure we follow the process with this hearing. It's something that we need to make sure that we do process on. If you look at the Gullah segways up and down the corridor, and when you look at other areas that have those maritime areas or marshlands, those persons that have outdated and antiquated equipment, we need to be able to look at those things. So we're just going to follow the guidance of those professionals, because some of the people that we've gotten in touch with, as well as the attorneys, they are the professionals. That's a question that always comes up, but the people of Sapelo Island, we all, in that respect, we are Gullah-Geechee in that respect. And so whether they came from Florida, and let me say this, the Florida Black Caucus is not here in person, but we're working with them also, because they had several residents from Florida. We lost one of our employees from DNR. We lost a gentleman here from Atlanta, Georgia. So we all are in the state of Gullah-Geechee. We are Sapelo. Thank you.